the Thanks. I'm going to hand over to Cedric.
Thank you, Carol. Hi, folks, and firstly, thanks for the opportunity to chat to you all. I do hope you find it entertaining and educational. I really have two themes that I'm going to work on this evening. One is, upgrading the methods that we deploy as business analysts, and the second is the tools and technology that we currently use. So without further ado, let me jump into the slides. If someone can just tell me if that's up.
Yes, it's up.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. As you heard, those of you that listened to the music for the introduction, that song was called "The Times Are A-Changing," and indeed they are. As Bob Dylan said, we at a point in the business analysis process world, which I call the process renaissance. Renaissance means a rebirth, and we definitely at a point, in the industry where there's a resurgence in interest in what we do. And that's fantastic news. And it's also scary news for some, because that means the spotlight's going to be on us, and the expectations are being raised. For the record, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is in my book. The book's called Business Genetics, same as my company, Understanding 21st Century Corporations. It's been published in Hindi and Mandarin as well, and it's used as a textbook in some business schools. Anyway, I'm going to jump into it because time's fairly restricted with two of us speaking tonight. And the first point I'd like to make is it's unbelievable what's happening in the industry. I mean, it's just so scary in a sense, all these new technologies that are unfolding as we speak. When I was young, when I joined IBM as a systems engineer many, many years ago, we'd announced new technologies like perhaps DB2, which is a new database management system based on relational theory. And the announcement would occur, and then it would take years, literally years, for that technology to manifest, and us to embrace it. Whereas nowadays, oh my goodness, I hear of things and suddenly everyone's using it, IoT and RP, robotic process automation. AI's been around for a while, but it's suddenly come of age, every time I log on, there's something about AI now, it really is fast and furious, so to speak. So I think everyone will agree with that. There's so many new technologies unfolding, on us, and why is that important? Well, that's critically important to guess who? To you all, right? You, the business analyst, you, the process engineer. These technologies influence operations in companies, right? Processes are changing. New processes have to be built. So as fast as these technologies come into being, that's how fast we as BAs and process engineers have to accommodate them and assimilate them, right? So we need to be aware of them first off. We need to know what AI is and what blockchain is and so forth. And then secondly, we need to know which processes to change and how to change those processes rapidly in order to leverage this new technology, okay? So the first point is there's this rebirth, this renaissance of the BA and the process engineer. And secondly, it's being driven even faster by these new emerging technologies. And sometimes we don't realize it. And I'll ask you, later on this evening, perhaps, to sit back and just think of that, think of the implications of all this technology that's suddenly, rushing towards us. And as I said, you are the responsible party to transform the organization. You are building the blueprints of the future, right? Do we realize that? Sometimes we don't, We're not just drawing pictures of processes. We are architecting the future operation of the organizations of the future. And those blueprints are going to influence people in the organization, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of people in large corporations, sometimes tens of thousands of people, and of course the customer base, right? The people out there that you interact with. So this is an awesome and significant responsibility that's being thrust on us, right? We have to get it right. We cannot fail, right? We have to assimilate technology, understand the process, build the blueprints, the processes, and deploy them. And that's how the organization's going to operate over the next, years. And of course, we'll need to constantly remediate and change as new and newer technologies manifest, right? So it's sometimes we don't think about that. We think we're just doing our job, but the job that we're doing has a huge responsibility for the organization. So please don't ever lose sight of that. Now, the reason I raise this as well is to make sure that we realize that we need to be using the latest thinking, right? The times are changing, as I said earlier, and we've moved from the 20th to the 21st century, and the methods constantly evolve and change, folks. So if you learn something, in 1990 or in 2000, it's now 2024. What's new? What's changed? It's the time of continuous education and learning. Gone are the days where you go to university, get your degree, and that's it for your career. We constantly have to refresh, right? So I urge you to do so, to embrace the change, right? Just as we encourage the business to change when we business analysts find optimization opportunities, right? That's our job, to look at the process, enhance it, optimize it, deploy it. And we tell business to change. No, you must do it this way. Here's the new blueprint. Here's the new process. We expect them to change. So therefore, we too must be prepared fully to change the way we work, right? And the ways of working for ourselves is also an evolution, okay? Don't stagnate, please. You'll be left behind, there's no doubt. Sorry, so just a final thought on that before I dive into the software side. In the 20th century, or the first part of my career, a lot of energy and effort went into model creation. We were kind of fudging our way through it. We were using fairly crude flow models, flow charts, flow charting techniques with decision symbols. And a lot of energy and effort went into creation of those models. And in fact, some of the business analysts I worked with viewed that as the purpose for their existence, right? They thought their job was to create process models. And that's entirely the wrong positioning, right? If you think that your job is to create process models, you better think again, because your job is to add value to the organization. The process models are a means to an end. So we need to take those process models and use them somehow to optimize, to employ, to eke out inefficiencies and defects, right? And as I say, in the first part of my career, most of the energy relatively went into model creation and less went into the analytics and the improvement. Now that's switched around in the 21st century. There are new techniques available right now that Rhodes Business School is teaching to the students to say, stop running workshops with business people, facilitation workshops with dozens of people in it. That's inefficient. It's counterproductive almost. There's new ways to assimilate and elicit data about the process, which saves us immense amounts of time, right? So model creation is reducing, and what we do with that data is becoming, the emphasis, which is where it should be, and that's high value to the organization. That impacts the income statement. That improves operational efficiency. And that's what leadership want from us, right? Not just to draw pretty pictures. So it's a big shift, and you need to be, again, equipped with the right methods, tools, and technology to do that, right? And speaking of tools and technology, what I often find is this was very, I spent 22 years in the United States. I founded Business Genetics there and worked with some of the largest and finest corporations, Microsoft and Bank of America, energy sector, so on and so forth. And what I often found in the United States was if BAs wanted to standardize on how they operate, they would do so by the acquisition of a software tool. Okay, so we're going to buy this tool. Here you go. Hand the tool out to everybody. You all have a software tool. We're all done. We're all at the same level. And nothing could be further from the truth, right? It's equivalent to me buying software, legal software, and thinking I'm a lawyer. I mean, that's not the case, right? Or buying medical software and saying, hey, I'm a doctor now. I've got the software. It's ridiculous, right? I can't hear you all laughing, but hopefully some of you are, because it is ridiculous. And in the same way, we can't buy BA software and become an expert in our profession. We need to understand the methods. We need to standardize on methods, and then we need to select the technology that supports the method, okay? So method first, then find software that supports your method. Don't think by buying software, you're going to become an expert. It's a fallacy. Okay, so now we're in the software realm. Very quickly here, there's two categories, broadly speaking, and give me some poetic license here. But broadly speaking, there's two categories of software that's available now in the 21st century. The first one is a spillover from the 20th century, and it is what I call electronic Crayola, right? Electronic crayons, drawing tools, right? You can acquire drawing tools to draw process models, in fact, for free. There's tons of them available. And those tools have some limitations, let's say, okay? The primary limitation is that they create static images, right? It's like a drawing, it's a Crayola, it's a picture. It's a static image of the process. Now, that may have value, okay, to communicate at a point in time, but as I said, it's a static image, it's not dynamic. And secondly, what do you do with it? All you can do with it is look at it, right? Stick it on a wall and say, there's a process. Check the box, it's modeled. And again, there's no value. I don't see any value in that, or minimal value. Okay, maybe to communicate the process, there's value there, but it's not impactful, changing the income statement value, right? To do that, we need more advanced technology. So please, when you look at the technology you're currently using, or if you're looking for technology, make sure you have something with an accessible database, right? We're building process models, and what we should be storing is data about the process we create, okay? Data about the process. So the activities are in a taxonomy, the responsibilities, the localities, and so on and so forth, right? So the database houses the operational processes, and we can view them through the pictures and build them with pictures, but the database is the end result, not the picture. The picture is a means for us to visualize and populate the database. And once it's in a database, a whole new world opens up for us, right? So that's my first big takeaway. Well, my second big takeaway. The first big takeaway is the times are changing. You need to get with it. It's the process renaissance. All this pressure on us. We're re-architecting, rethinking processes left, right, and center. First point. Second point is you need methods and technology to be more productive, and that technology needs to enable the analytics, right? Consequently, it must have an accessible database, right? So that's the big takeaway from my side this evening is to make sure you have an accessible database that houses your processes. Static images are, this is a list of some of the limitations of the Crayola type tools. Most of them are pure flowcharts, right? Linear flowcharting tools, right? And when I say linear flowcharting tools, I don't have time to explain the issues associated with linear flowcharts, but trust me, there's many, right? We need something more advanced than that. Most of these are free. You can go and download them for free. So management love that. But as I say, all you can do is draw your static images. A lot of them encourage the Rummler-Brace thinking. Gary Rummler was, instrumental in the 90s and beyond the 90s, actually, in introducing the notion of what most people call a swim lane. And most tools are still in that realm of the 90s of advocating swim lanes. Now, swim lanes, of course, have valuable information. What Gary was trying to do, Gary Rummler, he was trying to denote that activities need to be conducted or owned by a responsible party, right? So that's entirely valid, and I strongly support that notion. However, the depiction in a swim lane in the 21st century, where we have multiple roles, you all know what a RACI is: responsible person, accountable person, consulted person, informed person, 4 roles for one task. Draw that in a swim lane on a complex process, and you'll have chaos, right? However, we need in our database to say that this activity touches 4 different roles, and we need to be able to see that, but probably not in a swim lane notation. Level mixing, I don't have time to explain what we mean with by level mixing, but it's putting high level, low level activities. And if you're building linear flow charts, 100% guaranteed you will have level mixing embedded into your model. You'll have a high level task and a medium level, and a low. You have no way of discerning scientifically or mathematically what level that activity is. It's impossible. No human can say that's level 3, that's level 5, that's level 4, or those are all level 4s. How do you know? So we need some technique, some method, and some tool to help us with the level balancing. Okay. And I won't go. Last point I'll say here before I move on, I've already used up a chunk of time, is beware of tools that have what I call technocentric jargon, right? Go and look at our title again. In fact, this organization is called the International Institute of Business Analysts, right? B for business. And our primary clients are the business. That's who we're there to serve, okay? And if we are business, we're there to support the business. The methods, tools, and technologies we use should be business-centric, okay? Not jargon-centric or technocentric. So we're not going to have OCHs. Oh, come on, business, here's an OCH for you to validate. An OCH is a object class hierarchy. We don't want to do that, right? Or event process chains, or whatever other technology acronym you can think of. We want to keep it simple. This is an activity model. This is a what model. It's a who model. Try and be very business facing. Okay, so those are some of the issues with those Crayola type tools, and indeed some of the methods we use. And here are some, okay? And when I say some, I've actually done, sometimes we do this professionally for clients and help them build a list of requirements for their acquisition of process modeling software. And the number one requirement I would suggest is an accessible database. I've already mentioned that, and I think you get that, right? Secondly, the ease of use and the GUI for you, the business analyst, must be superb, okay? It must be drag and drop, and as fast as you can enter data is as fast as you can build the process model. It must be instant, right? If it takes time to move things around and some symbols and whatever, that's a problem. Drag and drop, enter the data. Drag and drop, power builders to enter data, click, enter data, click, right? And it automatically kind of formats and lays it out for you. So that's really important. Obviously, sharing the data files. In today's world, it's rare that just one person touches the process model or the models. We usually want to share that. And the big thing is the extracts, right? Slicing and dicing that database to eke out the value, right? To find the opportunities, to remediate the process, to come up with the future state or the to-be model, as some people call it, but you have to extract and slice and analyze the database. It should also have automatic reports on what's going on in that process database, and generators to generate things like role definitions, job descriptions, work instructions, operating procedures. All of that should be accessible in the software, right? Because now it's not about just building a process map, it's remediating, coming up with a future state, and then deploying, right? And role definitions, job descriptions, learning guides, operating procedures, all of those things will help us deploy the new process. And that's, I think, all I have time to say on this slide. Obviously, things like auto backup and recovery, and there's many more, but we need to move away from the simple crayons is all I can tell you. I'm going to close now and then start to hand over to Carol in a few minutes to get some great insights from her. But I've also put together a list of things which I believe are pretty practical insights, and it covers technology and it covers our profession. And the first one is, this has happened to me many times. We use a fairly robust tool, it's called the W5 software from Business Genetics, to map out the process, very detailed, very comprehensive, absolutely depicts all aspects of the process and the business operation, right? And then you show it to some people, especially leadership, and they say, oh, the software is too complex, right? Oh, I don't want to see that. I mean, simplified, right? We did. In fact, I did for a brewing company in the States. We simplified and abstracted the process, and the way their business boiled down to 5 activities, you know: acquire the materials, brew the beer, bottle, package, distribute, right? It's your business. And they said, oh, well, that's ridiculous. And, you know, we use Rocky Mountain water from the, you know, to brew our beer. It's a special thing. I said, oh, well, you can't see it in this model. It's too high level. So let's break down the brewing process into that and many other things that are required. And suddenly they got it, right? If you abstract to a too high level, it becomes absurd, right? Everything's the same. So be careful of that. And when people say the software or the method is too complex, it's not. What's complex is, and if you were a live audience here, you'd all shout out, the business, right? The business is complex, and the software, the method is showing that. And that's our job, to take this complexity and to simplify, right? That's what we're there to do, right? So it's not the software that's complex. So you remember that argument, because as your process models get more comprehensive, you will find that criticism leveled at you. Already discussed flowcharts, swim lanes. Plan your operating environment. You want to have multiple BAs accessing this. And please, folks, have some standards. You know, if everyone's doing their own thing, I'll show you from Bank of America in the States. In fact, I have another presentation, and I have literally a dozen different pictures that process engineers, business analysts use within the same bank to describe processes, and they're all radically different, right? So talk about confusing the business. It's absurd. Okay, so please have some kind of standard way of operating, standard methods, all use the same approach, and it'll result in other productivity gains. Common processes must be used. And the last point I'm going to make, because I'm right on time here, I think, is to please refresh your skills, right? If you were trained some years ago, if it's longer than a decade, it's a problem. Okay, things have happened. As I said, the way we facilitate and gather data from illicit data from the business has radically changed, right? We don't have these massive, enormous workshops anymore. The way we represent the process is multidimensional now. We describe the business, the process in 5 dimensions, right? It's activity, it's responsibility, the data usage, locality, temporal governance, and then the flow, right? And all of that must align to a purpose statement, something called purpose-based thinking. So all of these things are new, and you need to embrace these things because they help you build better output and produce better results and data to analyze. And I know it's a scary thing. I encounter folks that have been in the the profession for a while, and what we're asking them is to retool, right? And that's a scary thing for a lot of people. But remember, we are BAs, we are the change agents. We encourage the business to change on a daily basis. So please, let's not fear change ourselves. It's something that's natural, and there's so much, and it's so exciting. In fact, as you start to learn more, it's like a positive snowball, right? You get more results, more accolades, do more positive things for the business. So that's all I'm going to say. I thank you so much for listening to me. I'm going to stop sharing, and Carol's going to pick up from here, and we'll have some questions later on. Thank you so much. Carol, over to you.
Great, thanks. Let me just... okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, Carol, I can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so now exactly in terms of the change, you all know that things are changing at a horrendous rate at the moment, and we have to keep up as business analysts, and then on my side, specifically also related to the analytics, because things are changing in terms of what we could do a year ago, 2 years ago. It's really going quickly. So in terms of the AI use case studies, at the moment, we all have been playing with ChatGPT and a few other tools, Chat2Viz for the data. And we know, okay, it can do essay writing, it can do summarization, it can do translation, and it can get and do information retrieval. Those are the 4 main uses. We also all know, especially students, and I've been telling the students, about hallucinations. And because it's just vectorizing and looking for the nearest relationship in terms of that word and its relationship to others, it does sometimes bring you information that's, it couldn't find something, so it was an hallucination. So in terms of, I personally run it through Zetera, and in the legal industry, which is what I'm talking about, they then in turn, all these bespoke ones also run it through our sort of legal Zetera type equivalent. But these are the basic things that we can do. So in terms of what I'm going to be speaking about tonight is the life cycle of if you were a business and you want to modify the large language models, because obviously, especially in the legal industry, data is confidential. There's lots of laws that govern it. You can't just put your client's data or all your data into ChatGPT or Chat2Viz and run and try and get some, charts or line graphs. You just can't do that. So the first thing you have to do when you're looking at a bespoke use case is you have to think about your scope of your application the same way as you do. We've all been doing our IBA, and we know that that's a starting point for what we always do. In this case, I was looking at enabling planning, budgeting, and forecasting was the use case, and it will make more sense on the subsequent slides. But the point is you could be using it for anything. You could be using it for, in law, we trawl data for lots of cases and courts and things like statistics to try and see, where it would be best to try this. We also have use cases for documents, and there's new applications now where you can instantly rechange it to a different jurisdiction, and it will just sort of make sure it's going according to all those policies and laws. So there's lots of use cases. So you start always with a scope. Then you take your existing large language model, and you can use BERT or ChatGPT or FLAN, depending on your use case. And then within something, Hugging Face is the best one. If you do these courses, you'll see most of them actually set up the whole lab for you. You don't have to do anything. You're straight into it. And then you can select, your base model and go from there and train it for, different one-shot, many-shot. There's certain parameters that you would change. In the industry at the moment, we've had an explosion. I think Lexis have just released their AI application. Elite 3E have a different application, AI application, and I have seen on LinkedIn a lot of sort of back and forth about what percentage which product hallucinates at. So at the moment, it's obviously changing very rapidly. But the point about it is, even if it is hallucinating to a certain degree now, you know, it's gone so much from 3 to 4, we can just imagine, you know, in future, that is going to be ironed out. In our industry, we also have, so the big players in terms of practice management systems are Aderant and Elite. So they each have, Aderant has Straden, Elite has 3E. So, and then within the law firms, they actually often have their own AIs that are built on, for instance, ChatGPT, Lexis AI, Elite, and all of these are built on it. And some of these others are built on other large language models. Tagetic is also, they traditionally have a planning and forecasting tool, but they've also done their own predictive intelligence. So they're focusing on insights. And then also 3E has also actually got an insights package. So these insights packages traditionally, Tagetic is in Excel, but 3E Insights is data insights is in Power BI. So it's very nice and interactive for the users. They can immediately see very, very nice visualizations. And visualizations is my first love. So when you were talking earlier, Cedric, about the tools, the icons that are maybe not a shared understanding, that's a big thing. So in workflow, we also try and, you know, choose the icons and the colors and have a shared common understanding, which doesn't always work, but it does really enable your workflow and also your global transformation project. If everybody's got an understanding of colors and what they mean, then the communication just goes a lot quicker. So all these, so you have your scope, you've taken your base model, you now need to modify that. So you modify it, and we do a lot of prompt engineering, which a lot of people say is glorified questions, but it's basically the subject matter experts that then have to you know, make sure that the prompts are training the model, and also, you know, negatively helps, and you fine tune, you get the feedback, and then the evaluation. And then ultimately you need to integrate these apps. So a lot of times it's just like a ChatGPT is really just bringing you know, all the vectorized words. It's just literally doing one thing, but sometimes you need mathematical, or you need other actual processing that's better for other apps. So then you would just, with APIs, you just send your information back and forth, and you need to integrate all of this. So you need to, in our case, integrate it with your budgeting and planning tool. And I'll explain a bit more about that on the next slide. So in general, when we do these modification and adapting the model projects, you have to freeze well, there are different ways, but you can freeze the original weights and then put your actual data and everything on top of that. And because if you have a big model and you start sort of training yours over it, it can get to a stage where it gets to catastrophic forgetting, and it's a bit like going a little bit senile. So it's easier to freeze the weights, add like a thin layer of your own data, and then do again the prompt engineering and the sentiment analysis. You know, you have to train it and reinforce it, give it some negative examples, give it examples of what you want the output to look like, and then fine tune and feedback from your subject matter experts. The important thing to remember, I must say, about the subject matter experts is these models are not taking away the function or thinking on behalf of humans. The subject matter experts are still always fine-tuning, training. These tools are just really a lot of vectorization, and you know, the thought is still from the human. So in our use case example, and this is a little pet project that I really like, what we're looking at is the assumptions, so the budgeting and forecasting assumptions. So you know that you, for instance, your seasonality, when you would bill more, what your realization percentages are. So all the rules, you put all those rules in your system. In our case, in Tagetik, we had the rules, and then you generate, taking your data, you generate your profit and loss report. And we did it very visually with a heat map so that you can see easily where your variance, where you're off, in which areas of the company. And then you can tweak your assumptions and run it again. And if you have the luxury during your implementation of a few years back data, you can keep running it so that you can almost get your assumptions to be very accurate. So with those assumptions, you predicted almost the future next year, and you can test it perfectly because you are now in the following year. So you can see whether it was accurate or not. So if you do that a few times and reward the app for the good results, then you can get it to be quite accurate. And for those assumptions, you would be forecasting quite well. Obviously, if there's like suddenly a coronavirus and people are billing at a different, staying away, and the seasonality and the holidays are different, then your forecasts are out. But for those circumstances, you can train it to predict. So the same thing, you can do it on top of the base large language models. These are examples. You then train it with a good sentiment or a bad sentiment, and it's always very good to give it bad examples too. So when the assumptions produce a very bad heat map, then obviously that's also good for the model because it learns, oh, now I'm going away from where I should be, and it can come back. And then you repeat the process, optimize it. And the one thing that I would like to leave with you, those of you that don't have money for a lot of tools, if you maybe just get Chat2Viz, it's free. And if you select ChatGPT 3 as your model, then I think it's also free. If you select ChatGPT 4, you have to pay. But, you know, that's a nice way to start because Chat2Viz is amazing. You just literally select your data set and you verbally type in, I'd like a bar chart, or what you just type what you like, and it will generate your data. So it's really, really nice. And it's a real nice tool for people to play with. And that is me.
Thank you so much, Carol and Cedric, for that beautiful presentation. That was awesome. And I'm sure I can see a lot of people clapping their hands virtually for you because that was very brilliant. We'll go into our question and answers now, and please keep the questions coming. The first question here says, Cedric, I think this is to you. How can we ensure that complexity of process modeling tools align with the objectives of the modeling initiative?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Okay, how can we ensure that the complexity of process modeling tools align with the objectives of the modeling initiative?
Sure. Yeah, so I mentioned very briefly something called purpose-based thinking. And purpose-based thinking is a technique where we can align the complexity with the purpose at hand. So we need to be able to have methods, tools, and technologies that support any level of complexity. And business is complex in today's world. I've yet to see a simple business, to be honest. So expect complexity, right? And again, when you selecting software, ensure that that software and the method you're using can deal with complexity. And that's where, you know, I mentioned, and I'm as you can, I think, tell, I'm quite critical of two-dimensional flow charting, right? Because it's not showing all the complexity. You're ignoring it. And if you ignore that complexity, do so at your peril. So in closing to this question, I'd say, you know, make sure you use purpose-based thinking to understand what, you know, what's in front of you. Secondly, make sure the methods you use can deal with complexity. And as I said, methods first, technology second. Make sure the software aligns to the method. and can depict whatever level of complexity. So it's a closed circuit, I think. I hope that helps.
Yes, it helps. Thank you so much, Cedric, for that. Next question. What tool would you recommend for conducting business process management? I'm sorry, business process modeling, yes.
I'm not allowed to say. That would be I think would be unfair for me to say and you to pick that up. I think, I don't want to endorse any one product, even my own, I think you need to define your requirements. And there's, what I can say is there's multiple tools out there, and just make sure they have those criteria I mentioned, that they have a database, that they're easy to use, that they can deal with complexity. And there's a number of those available. But I don't think professionally I'd like to say, this is the one I recommend because, you need to make, I think, formulate your own opinions. I hope you'll forgive me for that.
No, I understand 100%. Thank you so much.
Sure.
To the next question. What do I need to do or know if I want to have a BPM consultancy for SMEs in this current industrial revolution in terms of skills, knowledge, certification, or any capability?
Okay. Here I will be biased. I mentioned the Rhodes Business School training. They have a very comprehensive program, and it covers, checks all the boxes, as they say. And there's so many new techniques. I mean, I obviously can't share them in this question and answer forum, but there's tons of methods and techniques which have evolved, to embrace to be more accommodating for subject matter experts, and to equip us as the BAs to be more proficient with modeling and to produce better results. So the Rhodes Business School is one source, and of course there's many other providers in the industry that teach some of the stuff. But a word of caution, I've seen some education providers here that are still teaching the old way of thinking. They're still teaching you how to facilitate big workshops. They're teaching you swim lanes, a lot of things that have we've evolved. So a word of caution there. Just be careful. Which knowledge you assimilate. So I hope that helps.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Cedric, another question. How can AI enhance decision-making capabilities within process modeling?
I love that question. That keeps me on my toes. That's a great question. And I'm a strong advocate of AI. I've looked at AI. It's been around a long time, but it's suddenly coming of age. And I absolutely foresee in the near term that AI will help us build a model, right? It'll actually help us build a process model. If we feed data into it, lots of documents from different sources, the AI tool will learn that a process consists of activities and responsibilities and data inputs and outputs and localities and temporal aspects, right? And it'll pick those things out of the documents and construct the process flows for us. And I think that day is going to arrive sooner than later. So it's coming, and it's going to come very quickly, and it'll be a major positive for us because, again, like I said in that one slide, our job can now be on how do we look for opportunities to improve that process. And of course, AI will probably help us there as well. But it still requires the skill of an analyst to be able to discern which is a good process model and which is a bad one, because AI doesn't sometimes know, and which is a good improvement and which is a bad one. So we'll still need the skills of a BA, but AI is really going to make a contribution, I believe, in the near term.
No, excellent, Cedric. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. So the next question, how does business process modeling contribute to digital transformation initiatives?
Shall I field that one as well?
How does business process
Yes,
modeling?
that's fine, Cedric.
Yeah. Okay. How does well, look, digital transformation. A lot of folks, you know, they compartmentalize things. Like they'll come in and say, okay, now we have blockchain, and they compartmentalize it. Now we have risk and controls, compartmentalize. And we have divergent processes for different audiences. And that's not good. We need to converge a process so that it can represent the areas where digital plays a role, right? We need to take a process and say, how can we apply digital technology to enhance this process, you know, to engage with the business or the customer or whoever. So it's fundamental. Process modeling is fundamental. It's a backbone of digital transformations, as it is for any other technology. We shouldn't have different processes for different technologies. We should have central processes and reflect risk and controls and digital technologies and you know, whatever else is of concern. So it's 100% supportive of digital, but not exclusively.
Thank you so much, Cedric. Another question here: how is privacy integrated into the AI development cycle to ensure compliance with privacy principles?
Carol, you want to take that one?
Yes. Sorry, just repeat that. What was it? How is something about compliance?
Yes. How is privacy integrated into the AI development cycle to ensure compliance with privacy principles?
Okay, so two things. Compliance in AI is very big in legal, in general terms. I'll answer specifically to process analysis, but compliance itself is obviously a very big thing, because, you know, we're working with data, other people's data, policy, all kinds of things. So there's actual certifications and almost like a whole industry in terms of compliance in AI. And data governance, and everyone's obviously focusing a lot of money and attention on that as these, you know, AI is spiraling. And the second thing is, you said, how are we going to ensure the compliance to the processes? Was that the question?
Yeah, I think so. And I'll take that second piece if you don't mind, Carol.
Sure.
Yeah, so, you know, compliance, if we're looking at, let's say, regulatory compliance, so there's some law regulation, albeit POPI or papaya, the process can absolutely reflect legislation or compliance, your laws, right? A law says you must do X or you may not do X in this jurisdiction, right? All of those things are translatable into the process model, or you can check the process model for them. So we've done tons and tons globally of compliance, looking at a process and ensuring compliance or not, to say, here's where you're out of compliance. The law says you must protect this information, and look, you haven't protected this information in the process, therefore you need to adjust the process. And on my intro, my bio, that's exactly what I did in the United States. I was called into Congress twice to show the congressional people, congressmen and women, the impact of legislation on some of the business processes in a particular industry. And I could show them exactly what the legislation would do, because you know, process shows you have to do things. That's activity, right? In a jurisdiction, that's an area, which information you need. So a high degree of synergy between compliance, regulations and such, laws and rules and processes. We can reflect them and we can show where we're in or out of compliance. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Cedric. That helps. Thank you so much, Carol. Carol, you want to add to that?
Timothy, I saw one interesting question where somebody asked me, I don't know if it was you or someone else, about bias within the data. Was that one of your questions?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a very good question, because obviously they did some research in the UK, and in the beginning with the first models, if you asked ChatGPT, I think it was 3, for their definition of CEO, they, in terms of the same CVs and everything, they were actually quite biased that a woman wouldn't be a perfect example when they were asked to select CVs. And that was simply because they didn't have enough examples of women CEOs in terms of the data. So obviously, if you train on certain data, then, and the bias is in that data, you're obviously going to get those results. So there is like a field where we're actively looking to try and remove the biases where we know they are in the data. But obviously, the ChatGPT is working on the data it's been fed, and that's the way it works. So we have to actively work against known biases, but working against known biases is in itself, sometimes people feel a bias. So there is like almost a whole industry of how do we ethically train these models. But all I want to leave you with is that obviously it's based on your data. So if what group isn't equally represented, then you have to, just like you have to do in stats, weight it. But the question of how to weight and the agreement between what is ethical or not is obviously where the questions lie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carol. A lot of questions are coming in. I don't know if we'll be able to answer them all because of our time, but I'll just pick some. What are the best practices for integrating process modeling tools with existing IT systems? I think, Cedric, this is for you.
Yeah, so look, you can view a process through various lenses, and if I look at a system usually is used to automate a process. Okay, so if we define a process, often we called upon as business analysts to assist with automation, and the way we do that is we derive requirements. Now, the way I advocate is to define the process, improve the process so that there's no defects in it, right? That's optimized. And then that process is going to be reflective of the system. So we can denote on the process which systems or which applications or which components of an application or which transaction code is going to execute an activity in the process model. We can denote which database stores the information required by that activity. So any good modeling tool should be 100% supportive of either depicting the process manually or as an automated or as a hybrid. Because in reality, some activities may still happen manually that flow into something that's automated by a system, which then flows back to a manual activity or set of processes. So again, the method and process tools you use should be capable of storing manual or reflecting what's manual and what's automated, but it should be the same method and tool, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Cedric. Another
Sure.
question, I think this is for Carol. How can BAs leverage on AI in the finance sector?
So in the finance sector, finance sector, they use AI for a lot. They use it for obviously with the shares, and you watching the market and predicting and trying to get a lot of sort of insight into trades and how that should work. In the finance sector, they also use it for fraud and to try and figure out, fraudulent transactions, recognizing what you normally do, how you normally do things. Do you normally tap, do you normally withdraw money from that country? So obviously, so that is a big use case for finance. All the same, so when I say I work in legal, we do, it's still based on practice management systems, which are financial, are components. So all the things that you would use AI for in that is the same as in the finance industry, purely. So any sort of, you can use it for workflow, some smart checking the pipelines, doing some AI around the bottlenecks, anything where previously we had a lot of static AI, and so but now we're looking at generative AI, where we can try and get it to learn what is good and what's bad. So all the data insights are the same. So off the financial system, we try and look in the data and see what is of value that we can use in terms of managing that business. And that's the same for law and finance. So lots and lots of applications in those areas.
Thank you so much, Carol. I think that's all the questions we'll be able to take tonight. And we have Fatuani here saying kudos to you, Cedric. I think you also taught him back in 2012, and he's here singing your praises. Thanks, Moronga, also saying it was a great session. Thank you for the great insights. And thank you to Deborah saying the session was awesome. And some people are asking for mentorship. Cedric and Carol, are you open to that? And if you are, will you kindly share your contact details or LinkedIn name so that people can just chat you up or reach out to you in any way?
Sure. From my perspective, fortunately, I think I'm the only Cedric Tyler on LinkedIn, so I'm pretty easy to find. I'll be the only one that pops up. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and you'll have access to my email once we, I accept your invite. And I must have about a few thousand or many thousand BAs that I'm linked in with, and I often share insights and events and so forth. So please feel free to do that, and happy to field questions through LinkedIn, no problem, or email.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so
And the
much.
same for me. I've given my both my Rhodes email address and my LinkedIn, which is the carol.cuthbert@kestrel-bs.com. And you're welcome to send me an invite on LinkedIn or send me an email to the Rhodes address. Either way, I've put both in the chat.
All right. Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you so much, Cedric. And I will say thank you all once again for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here. Please join us again for our tools and technicals in the next 2 weeks. So we'll be happy to have you around. Thank you all. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye.